Finally tonight, Herington, Kansas, a small town that became famous because of the Oklahoma City bombing. Elizabeth Farnsworth, a Kansas native, reports.
It's been raining in Kansas since early April. Raining at Fort Riley in Junction City, where Timothy McVeigh and Terry Nichols served together in the late 1980s. And raining at the Dreamland Motel, where McVeigh spent several nights before he allegedly blew up the Oklahoma City Federal Building.
He came in and asked how much is a room for one night, one person, one bed. And I said 24. He said, I will stay 4 nights. You give me a discount. We talked about 10 minutes, close to 10 minutes, and last at least I gave him his discount. He was so happy, he smiled all over.
A few miles west is Elliott's Body Shop, where McVeigh rented the truck that supposedly carried the explosives to Oklahoma City. You turn south here and head down Highway 77 to get to Herington. In a few miles, you pass by Geary State Fishing Lake, where the government alleges McVeigh and Nichols built the bomb. Just beyond is Herington, a quiet farming and railroad town with a population of about 2,700. Timothy McVeigh lived here part of the time he was stationed at Fort Riley. Terry Nichols moved here in March this year and, allegedly, used this house as a base of operations while assembling the materials for the bomb. When he walked into the local police station on April 21st and then was taken into custody by federal marshals, Herington hit the front page, and townspeople are still recovering from the shock.
I felt violated. I felt that in our naive innocence that we had been taken advantage of a bit by this particular individual, and I still feel that way.
I just can't believe it. I mean, it's hard enough trying to sell your community as a small community anyway, and we don't need this. You know, it's like, why do we always get the black eye type of thing, you know? And then I said, who is this guy? I don't even know him, you know? And then they said, well, he just moved here 6 weeks ago, you know, but yet, you know, it's always comes out, Terry Nichols, Herington, Kansas.
Even our local high school kids went on a senior trip to Dallas. I think it was Dallas.
Yeah.
And when they come back through Oklahoma City, their bus was booed.
Because it said Herington on the
Because it said Herington on the side of the bus.
I think the students stopped there because, yes, it was a piece of history. On the reverse side, though, I talked to another teacher, and she was very heartened. Her class, I think their third graders, had written letters to students in Oklahoma City expressing their sorrow over the situation. And students from Oklahoma City wrote back, and she said time and again the letters said, we don't hate you. And I thought that was wonderful that those children could be so understanding.
Herington is a town where shopkeepers on Main Street have had little reason to fear strangers, like Terry Nichols. What was he like?
Very, very nice. Very, very nice to wait on. No, I would never have connected him with, because we don't look for people like that in Herington.
Terry Nichols was in here the morning of the bombing. He came in probably around 11:15 to 11:30 that morning.
What was he looking for?
He had purchased something a week before, and he wanted some instructions on how to use it because there were no instructions in the box, and he came back to find out about that.
What was it he bought?
A water magnet.
What is a water magnet?
It's a magnet that takes the sediments out of the water. You attach it to your water line.
You must have been really surprised when you found out that, I mean, he may, of course, not be involved. He's innocent until proven guilty, but that he might have been involved.
Right. On Friday afternoon when we were told that he had turned himself in, we just couldn't believe it.
So, really, that's his alibi. He wasn't in, at least his alibi for not being in Oklahoma City that day, is that he came in here.
Right.
Have the law enforcement people spoken to you about it?
The Federal Public Defender's Office called us the Monday after the bombing, and the FBI talked to us on May the 12th and 13th.
Herington's newly acquired notoriety didn't keep people away from this year's all-school reunion, which was held on the Memorial Day weekend. People from around the country gathered in the grade school gymnasium.
Co-president Keene Donahue, 1933.
They paid tribute to former teachers and fellow graduates of Herington High School. And they were able to joke, gently, about what happened when the FBI came to town.
Several weeks ago, Herington seemed to make the Singapore front page, the London Times. And I don't want to get into details of that, but there were some comedy things that usually comes up out of something like that. And this happened to be two old gentlemen uptown, between 85 and 90 years old, that belonged to the Spit and Widow Club, you know. And they noticed an influx of people wearing coveralls, had big gold letters on the back. One of them said FBI. The other looked, the other old fellow said, Hank, you know, he said, I believe Harrington's got a convention going on in town. Yeah, and he says, I know who they are. He said, Farm Bureau Insurance is here today.
Of course, I'm smiling. It's almost a gallows laughter, you know. Why are we smiling about this, and why are we talking about how our town is on the map for such a horrible thing? Thank God I have the, almost the anonymity of a big city to kind of wrap around myself.
I just told my mother a couple nights before, I said, Mother, I'm so glad that I was born and raised where I was and when I was, for the values that were placed in me in this community. Then, of course, to have chopped up the values in a sense. But I'm glad to have learned that he wasn't raised here, he just lived here. So the values evidently wasn't there. He must have been someplace else.
You know, this is a friendly town. You can sit down next to somebody in the cafe and say good morning to them, and they'll strike up a conversation. But you sit down next to somebody in Phoenix and say good morning, and the guy looks at you like, what's he want? There's a big difference between this little town and the big cities. There is.
Bill Sauer and others who came back for the reunion say that as much as they miss Herington, they're not likely to live here again. They've found work and made homes elsewhere. Like other small towns all over America, Herington has been losing its lifeblood, its people, for decades. In its heyday in the 1930s, the town was a major center of the Rock Island Railroad. Some 85 freight and passenger trains would roll through Herington each day. But after the Rock Island went bankrupt in 1980, rail traffic and the number of railroad jobs decreased dramatically. That loss and the ongoing farm crisis have cut Herington's population almost in half, from over 5,000 in the 1930s to 2,700 today. Some of the town's buildings have been deserted for years. The main street is struggling to stay alive. Gladys Johnson, who says she's over 90 and who's lived in this house for 75 years, remembers how the town used to be.
When I was first married, we went to the Dreamland Theater, my husband and I, and it was out almost 11 o'clock, and we'd run real fast and go down to the Eagles, get there before midnight, and go to another show. They had 3 shows, and then there was another show. We had 3 shows, 3 drugstores. I don't know how many eating places. It was booming.
Gladys Johnson has accepted the changes in Herington with humor and grace, but there's a darker side here too, a sense of loss in some people that breeds frustration and anger at the federal government, an anger not too different from Nichols and McVeigh's. Gordon Schultz returned from nearby Whitewater for the reunion.
The Nichols and McVeighs of the world, they're everywhere. I mean, you know, we have met the enemy and he is us. I mean, we share their sentiment up to a point. I mean, there's a lot of anti-government sentiment in this part of the country, always has been.
I think some people are disheartened for a lot of different reasons, and I think sometimes it's just easier to blame the federal government for the problems.
You know, as far as I'm concerned, anyone who would do this has got to be mentally imbalanced. And I think we've got more of them out there. I hope something like this doesn't ever happen again, but I think there's a possibility it could.
Even with all that's changed in Herington, much has stayed the same. This is a place where people still lay flowers on family graves on Memorial Day. A place where Gladys Johnson says she feels safe, even knowing that Terry Nichols lived here for a while. And there's hope for the future. The Southern Pacific is building expanded switching facilities, and some railroad jobs are returning. A few new businesses are coming in. And Terry Nichols' sojourn here has brought some important lessons for the students who were booed in Oklahoma City, for example.
They learned something about discrimination from that. Just because what was on their bus, just because of where they were from, they were being discriminated against. And I think that really made them thoughtful.